Welcome everybody to another episode of Convict Christianity. We are your hosts. My name is George and we have Ilya, of course.
How's it going?
And today we have a couple of very special people. We have Pastor Chris Atavle from Smithfield Baptist Church.
Hello, George.
And we have the deacon of Smithfield Baptist Church, Steve Fawkes. Welcome.
Hey, George.
So today we're going to be talking about, everyone, voting. We've got an election coming up, so it's a very, interesting time in Australian society. And so as Christians and looking at the Lordship of Jesus Christ, we want to look at how does our Christian views, how does the Lordship of Christ impact Christians and what they think of voting. And I guess, when we think about, government and voting and who we should vote for, I think it's, important as Christians that, I think one thing that we struggle to understand is the actual role of a government. What is the government for? What's the purpose of a government? If anyone wants to, throw an answer out there, you can say something.
I think simply the role of the government is to punish evildoers and reward the good.
Yeah. And where do you get that from?
Romans 13.
Romans 13. So, the Bible says in Romans 13 that the governing authorities have their authority from God. They're given their authority by God, and they're established by God as, punishment to evildoers and rewarders of the good. Would we all agree with that?
Amen. And I think with that in view, that's really going to construct our topic. And like you said, George, just our thoughts of how Christians perceive voting and what they should do when it comes to voting. So I'm excited, as you said, to have Pastor Chris and Brother Steve here with us to share their views, because I've spoken to Chris a few times on political matters and issues, and he's much more well-rounded on the subject than I am. So I'm excited.
You want to say something? I know you're looking like you want to say something there.
Oh, just it's not just Paul that tells the Romans; it's Peter also that writes in his letter and says that the government is there to reward that which is good and punish that which is evil.
Mm.
And we have to realize sometimes governments do the opposite.
Yeah.
They are actually rewarding the evil and punishing the good. And Peter goes further and says something like, you should continue to do what's good. In other words, you should not follow your government when they reward evil, because the bottom line is God rewards you when you do good, as opposed to, and you actually silence the ignorant, is what Peter says. So when it comes to voting, we're actually constantly thinking about people who will reward that which is good and punish that which is evil. And so voting is important in that sense.
In that sense, would you go to the point like you mentioned earlier, as Christians we should continue doing good even when our government's doing evil? Would you say it is good for a Christian to vote?
So I would say yes. I mean, we live in a democracy, and a democracy assumes you get a vote, obviously, but we sometimes think it just came into the head of men to just allow us to vote. But it was actually a Christian thing that every single human is of equal worth, and that they have dignity before God. Plato, people say, was the one who came up with a democracy. He did not have any plans to let everybody vote. It was really the Christian ethos that said everyone really should be allowed to have their say, and they should be treated equally. And so here you have a society built on that. If we don't take advantage of that very freedom that we have, we're actually, if you like, saying we don't agree with that principle.
And we get that from obviously Genesis chapter 1 and 2, where God
Correct.
created man in his image, in his likeness. should vote because of that. That's what you're saying?
They should take that responsibility seriously. Now, it's true that we can't know everything when we vote, and there are lots of people who really find it tedious to try to find out everything in their even little area. But still, we should speak to people, at least amongst our family and friends and church, and find out something so that it can guide us in our voting.
So, Brother Steve, if you don't mind me asking you, just to draw you in a bit more, what do you say to Christians? Because I knew, especially when I first got saved, I was at this point, and I guess my theological views swayed me this way also. But what would you say to Christians that say there's no point in voting? It's always going to be a wicked government anyway. So I'm just going to, go to my closet, pray in private, and move on with my life.
Jesus is coming anyway. It's just going to get worse and worse. There's no point.
That's it. So what do you say? What do you say to Christians with that mentality?
Oh, I guess there's a lot of things you could say, but I mean, one of the things I would say is, well, how did you choose your wife? Did you just sort of say, well, there's no point in worrying about it too much? Just go and pick someone off the street. If you had the opportunity to choose your parents, what would you do? Just say, oh, hang it, it doesn't matter. No, I mean, natural human reason demands that we put some thought into it. This is important. The nation is a God-ordained institution, so we know that it's important, and to just abdicate from that just doesn't seem right to me. I mean, it is true that in our system, one little vote doesn't count at all, but treating politics important does count over time and over generations. If you can influence someone else to take it seriously, then it does count, and it is effective over time.
I think that statement, the nations and government is God ordained, should make Christians realize that it's important.
Yeah.
If something is ordained by God, if something is created by God, as you said, you don't look at the family structure or the marriage and just say, oh, it's not important. No, it's important because God established marriage in Genesis. Yeah. And so it's God who ordains government. It's God who's instructed government to have authority over people for good and evil. And so Christians should be thinking, well, if this is something that's ordained by God, well, maybe I should stop for 1 second and think, well, what does God expect from me in this time, right? And so, we're going to carry that further, if it's God ordained, then the next logical conclusion, and there's biblical scriptures to this as well, is that Christ is Lord over the government. You look at Psalm 2, for example, where the psalmist tells the princes and the rulers and the kings to kiss the Son, lest he be angry. It says the nations rage, and he's talking to the people. But he specifically says for the rulers and the kings to kiss the Son, to bow down to the true King, who is the King of kings, who is the Lord of lords.
So going on then, playing devil's advocate, that person, once again, that doesn't want to vote and believes it's a waste of time, like you said, it's God ordained. God ordained it, right? Christ is Lord over all, over government. So, Pastor Chris, I'll come up to you with my new fancy theology. I'm like, God ordains governments. Why waste my time voting then?
Once again, it's this idea that the reason we have the vote and the reason we have a liberal or a free vote where you can make a choice is something that was a Christian ethic. It was actually the fact that the dignity of man was considered critical in letting every person vote. You can get to many countries, if you want, where you don't get to vote, or if you do get to vote, you get to vote, but someone's watching to make sure you vote the right way. And if you don't vote the right way, well, you might lose something in the process. Now, in that situation, you can certainly say, well, I'm happy to go there. But here you've been, if you're a Christian, God has providentially put you in a country where a Christian ethic has asked you or given you that freedom to actually be involved in a God-ordained institution. I think it doesn't make sense to say that.
So what you're saying is you're welcome, atheists who live in Australia. You get this freedom.
You have this freedom.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important when you go back to the fact that it's a Christian ethic, because as I said, to those Christians that have that mindset of there's no point in voting, don't get involved in politics, sadly the world's going to hell, so just let it all burn. I don't want to go too far and say that they're for like completely committing sin, but I think it is a bit evil when you have that mentality. Like you said, when we're called,
it's definitely an error.
That's it. Like when we are called to do good, we do good. As most of us here, we are reformed, so we believe in the sovereignty of God.
All of us here are reformed.
Yeah, isn't that what I said?
You said most.
Oh, I wasn't sure about you. So back to my point, believing in the sovereignty of God, we don't just wake up and say, I'm not going to go to work to the honor and glory of God because he's sovereign. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I think the same idea with voting. It's not God ordained government, so I don't do which is good and vote for that man or that woman that closest follows biblical values. If you give up that right, I believe you are doing an evil thing. You are doing a wrong thing.
With that sovereign one as well. Oh, sorry, you're going to say something, Steve. Go.
I grew up in a religious cult that doesn't vote, and the verse they use, we used to every time after the election we get a letter, either pay a $30 fine or give a reason. So we used to write in the reason. We used to quote that verse from Nebuchadnezzar, if I remember rightly, that the Most High is sovereign over all nations, all the kingdoms of earth, and gives to them anyone he wishes. But that doesn't tell you anything. That doesn't tell you not to vote. My feeling is that in that group anyway, and probably several others, politics is divisive, and they just don't know how to handle it. They don't, and therefore they run away with it and run away from it and just say that it's bad and evil because it's just too hard for them to deal with.
It's the great old lie: never mix religion and politics together.
Yeah.
And as Christians, we've been fed that lie so much that most Christians just don't think you should ever, the two shall not meet.
Yeah.
But if you think about what politics are for, as we said before, it's God ordained, number one. Number two, those who are in government create laws, and laws are moral. Laws affect morality.
Yeah.
And so Jesus is definitely interested in morality. He's definitely interested in how we live our lives, because politics touch so much of our lives in everything, especially these days. Like it shouldn't, but it does. And so who we vote for is very important.
You have to understand the Christian, though, that says if everything is corrupt, there's no point in voting. You might not agree with them, but you have to at least understand the fact that you can reach a point of despair because you can actually be in an electorate where there's nobody that is saying much that's different. So you can actually go to a election like we have now where the two candidates in your, if you like, electorate have no policies. They've put nothing. They've just put colours up.
Yeah.
You actually don't know anything about anybody.
That's like a couple of mine that I've requested information about and I got nothing back from them. I'm like, well, you're just a puppet to fill in the space, I think.
Yes.
And you don't know who you're voting for.
So as a Christian in that situation, if you've got absolutely nothing, I would actually understand if you made your vote for the local seat a donkey vote and just saved your vote for, say, the lower house, where you could pick someone who is a Christian or you could pick somebody who is. So it's not like, for instance, if you were in a country where you only had one political party and the other person who was there on the ticket was going to be assassinated next week anyway. I could understand that person not voting in that situation.
And I think, like, what should Christians do in that situation? I want to talk about that a little bit later on, because I think in that despairing moment, I guess we can feel like all hope is lost. And then when you're in despair, when you feel like there's no point, it leads to zero action. So I think as Christians, I think one thing we need to start thinking about is, okay, let's just say I'm in despair. Let's just say I'm looking at all the candidates. I'd like to talk a little bit about later on maybe, because I want to ask you another question. What should Christians do then? But another thing that I think we should know is, because this potentially would go to like a lot of young people, and so many young people don't. I think only this year, I'm 31, and only this year I realized how our government works and is structured. Do you just want to speak a little bit about the lower house, the Senate, the executive branch? Do you just want to give a quick brief? Like, when you're voting, what are you voting for? Like, what is that? Like, what is, you know, I don't know if either Steve or Chris.
Well, you're voting in the parliamentary system. You're voting for a representative who's there to represent you and vote for you. So you're going to pick someone, or you're going to vote for someone who you think will vote your way. There's 100 in our country. There's 150 electorates, and whoever gets the most electorates, the party that gets the most electorates, they form government, and they can.
They form from the lower or the
and that's in the lower house. that's
in the lower
the
house.
powerhouse.
Yep.
That's where all the laws are made.
Yep.
And that's the powerhouse. Once they pass a law, it then goes to the Senate for approval, and the Senate is like a check or a balance. Normally Australians, by and large across history, have had the good sense to, when there's been a majority of one party in the lower house, to put the opposite party in the majority in the upper house, which is the Senate. Yep. But that's become more mixed lately because of minor parties. That mainly applied back in the two-party system. But even now, the Senate acts pretty effectively, reasonably effectively, as a check on power.
Very good. That's just for people who might not understand how it works, because I didn't know.
It's interesting that our education system, which used to teach that, no longer does. And so you've got a lot of sausages coming out of the sausage factory without any meat in it.
So I remember getting taught that.
Well, that's good.
So hang on. Let me clarify. Because it was in primary school, I would have been about 10 years old. I don't actually remember the outcome and even what Steve just presented and how it all worked. But I remember they did teach us it. I didn't remember what they taught us, but I just remember we were taught roughly that. But you'd think you're teaching a 10-year-old that who's not going to vote or discuss it, at least. And this is only if you're an 18-year-old that cares about what's happening around you. Most 18-year-olds don't. I didn't. So by the time you hit, you're 25, 30 years old and you actually start caring about politics, you've completely forgotten what they taught you when you were 10. And you would think that growing up throughout high school from the ages of 13 to 18, they would be drilling this into you more and more and preparing
There's a reason
you.
why they're not. So.
Yeah, there is. So look, I don't want to veer, but I think it's going back to a question I wanted to mention before, George, was, and we've touched on it a bit, but I think I want to dive into it a bit more. Who should we vote for? I'm not saying list, parties and that. You can if you want to give examples, but I'm just saying, what should we be looking for as Christians for somebody to vote for?
Well, to add to that, because you got the Martin Iles style, because there's a couple of different, I guess, methods. The Martin Iles style says, don't look at the party, look at the person. So at each electorate, you want to vote for the most, Christian, conservative person. That could be in Labour. They're not, but they could be. And you should vote for them. He makes mention that there are people in Labour that were warriors in the last couple of years that he really likes and could work with. People in the Liberal Party, people in One Nation, So he goes, don't vote for a party, vote for a person. Where you look at a lot of the, I guess, the so-called freedom fighters, they're saying vote the majors last. So go all your freedom parties and then vote your majors last.
The issue is this that I find. One, if you vote minority parties, other than, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but from what I've seen, other than One Nation and maybe the Liberal Democrats, you don't know what any of the minority parties actually, like policy-wise, what they hold to on an overall arching scheme.
UAP would have their policies, yeah.
But I've looked up the UAP website.
When?
About 3 months ago. Have they updated it?
I'm sure they would have now.
Okay.
They definitely got it up there, bro.
Okay.
Even so, they can be pretty vague.
Yeah, that's what I'm not saying there was nothing there. I'm not saying they weren't showing policies, but I'm just saying they weren't clear on their policies. So what I'm getting at is, one, it's right now in our day and age, and I know it's a bit of a cop-out and excuse, but sort of advice on how to deal with it. A lot of people don't have time to find out what each individual politician in their electorate holds to policy-wise.
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
It's a cop-out.
Yeah, I said it's a bit of a cop-out, but you still have to respect the fact that some people don't even know where to look.
It took me 10 minutes on the internet to work out who are the candidates in my electorate, to get the emails and email every single one of them.
All right, so how do you do it?
Go look. Your electorate. Let's just say you're in the electorate of, I don't know, what's this one, MacArthur. All right, and you say, all right, who are the candidates? Google, who are the candidates for the MacArthur election 2022, and it comes up.
Yeah, keep going.
On
Explain
ABC.
the process.
Then you click on the people. It takes them to their page, has their email. Then you write an email to them saying, hey, what do you stand for?
Okay.
All right.
So if you don't have time, that's how you do it.
So that's taking the Martin Iles approach, which is good. And in an ideal parliamentary system, that would be best. That's how it's meant to work. You're meant to actually check out your representative. But there is a bigger picture. In reality, it is a two-party system, and Australia is heading towards a presidential style of politics where we actually, whether we like it or not, we're voting for a prime minister. And in that context, at least in the short term, I think the vote the miners first is entirely valid. It's simple, it's effective, and there's no miners going to get into government, at least not next election or the next 2 or 3. And it sends a strong message to the majors that they need to reform.
Not just that, I'll also say this, and please, once again, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just say in your electorate, you have a very good Liberal candidate, right? You vote him in, the Liberal Party gets more seats, but then Liberal Party, and I think we can all agree, is overrun by the left now. The Liberal Party is just another left-wing party now. So what we've done, debatable, but okay, soft left, right? They're a soft left party. What we've done now is, we've got our good conservative guy in that seat, but I'll be honest, especially when it comes to Australia's system, that one good conservative guy in that seat doesn't do much for you. You would rather a minor party guy in that seat to try and give minor parties more power than a very good Liberal guy.
You reckon?
That's how I feel.
You feel the same, Steve?
I feel in the short term it sends a protest.
Mm.
I like, Martin Niles' idealistic approach,
Yep.
and that's how it should work.
Yeah.
But strategically,
It's
I'd
a bit of
like-
a sucker punch right now, you're saying.
Yeah.
Give the government
Yeah.
a jab, a quick 1-2,
yeah,
get them to straighten up and sober up
yeah,
and let them know who's boss. Is that what you're saying?
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. Chris?
I think the point that we make about the two major parties is there are many votes where the party tells everybody to vote along one line. And it used to be predominantly only Labor that would do that, but now it's Liberal more so.
Can you clarify for me? Because I don't understand.
So, for instance, if a vote comes to Parliament and all the MPs have to either say aye or nay, Labor will tell
Yeah.
everybody in their, if you like, Parliament to vote exactly the same way. So, for instance, even if you disagreed with something,
I get you.
you just have to vote with
Yeah.
Labor. So
you just toe the line with the party.
with the whole party.
Yeah.
So even if your own territory, for instance, MacArthur or McMahon or whatever, actually heavily leans against where the party's going, the actual member doesn't get to choose. They have to follow the party. And so that's becoming more so in the Liberal Party as well, where the rank and file are not choosing the candidates anymore. They're all being chosen from head office. And so the more that's happening, the more it's becoming a party vote. And so if you say the party has been infiltrated by people with a certain view, whether it be morally or whether it be economically or whatever, it'll just toe the line. What you find is, and with Steve's point, is that if you do the protest vote, you're going to break up that follow the leader approach, and then you move away from that presidential election and you go back to the democracy as we were supposed to have it. Now, having said that, it is always going to be difficult as to how to vote, because you could end up with a Christian in the major parties in your electorate, and it would be, your conscience to make that decision.
Yeah, so I guess with that then, I think the next best thing to look at is what should we be looking when it comes to whether it's economic or moral values. I think moral values are more what's important, especially in our day and age with how social justice and everything is going. What should we be looking for in our candidates? I feel like there's three views, I'd say, of parties today. You have those that have just totally sold out to pretty much Romans 1, where they're pro-homosexuality, pro-transgenderism, pro-lying, just total immoral. That is their creed. Then you have a view which is just totally libertarian, where everyone does whatever they want. No one can say to the other person, you can't do this, you can't do that. Everyone has just total libertarian freedoms. And then the third view is you've got some moral restriction there. I wouldn't say they're completely biblical moral views, but they have lines of morality, and it is a system that as Christians, if we get involved in, we would be able to sway more to a biblical view. I see those three sort of breakups of political parties today. So how would you see that overall in our political parties, and how would you encourage Christians to vote the right way? Steve? I'll go first.
Um,
Was that too long of a
It
question?
was
Should
very
I?
long. I was like,
All right.
yeah. I was like,
Sorry.
keep,
Sorry.
It, keep it
Just
short.
telling us the answer.
I know. I was like, hey, you just want to
I-
tell us the answer? Just tell us what you think. You have to put in a question.
No, I'm saying so. You have those three views,
We
right?
got it.
But who holds to? Yeah, Steve,
Well,
go.
the
I'll jump
clear
in.
answer. Hold on. The clear answer you said was if there's a party that holds to more. So
Yeah,
as Christians, when we're voting, we want to vote. All right. So when we think of a government that's supposed to reward that which is good and restrain the evil, all right, we don't. That morality, right, is not made up from pie in the sky. We get that from the Word of God, right? And so when we look at a party, you answer the question. When you look at the party,
No. So, okay. So I said there are parties where if Christians get involved in, you could sway them. You could. But I wouldn't throw out the completely libertarian parties. Now, it'd be harder because you'd have to get involved and then you'd have to start swaying from their total libertarian view, which is easier sometimes than going into these parties that you might be able to sway. They're just structured in a better way, but you might not be able to sway them as easy. Like, obviously, yeah, easy answer. Those that follow Romans 1, if you can avoid putting them on your ballot, don't put them on your ballot. But you need to put down 7 options, right? So sometimes you only have 7 options. So they're going to be there
you
somewhere.
always have to put the major parties. They're going to be on there.
All right. So what I'm saying is, I wouldn't totally just say don't vote for these total libertarian parties. So you would say, look, I'm going to name 2. You have the Liberal Democrat Party, which is total libertarian, and then you have One Nation, which has right now they have good strong values that Christians might be able to sway, but with their structure and their setup, it can just be swayed the same way that major parties were swayed.
I think Christians need to think about it. But Steve, you're going to say something.
Look, it's messy in a way because politics is messy. And I was just saying to Chris on the way down here, what do you do, for instance, where you've got a candidate with a bad character and a history of scandal, say, for instance, and but a good set of policies. You've got all these considerations to make.
Are you referring to Donald Trump?
Yeah. Didn't Piper say something about this?
Did he?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah, John Piper.
I think that as Christians, we do need to think about a hierarchy of values. You say Romans 1, that includes a lot of different things. And parties come to, put themselves before you with a policy mix. And you've got to think of what's more important than the other. You've got the debt issue is a moral issue. How important is it in relation to sexual morality or a whole raft of other things? And then you've got abortion, which to the Christian mind is or should be, perhaps right, it probably is one of those things which should be a single issue vote. If personally, and I can't see how a Christian can vote for a party which advocates for abortion, even though they might have a whole lot of economic policies which I agree with. And then on the other hand, you might have a party which is against abortion who would have economic policies you don't agree with. At some point, you need to get some clarity about your, about your hierarchy of values. But even then, it's messy.
I think we can get. It is difficult because if there's a party that's going to send the country into further debt, it's not good. But they have a better, I guess, morality in the sense of abortion, maybe even same-sex marriage or whatnot. But like when I think about, some of those scriptures that you've got in front of you, and that, like, righteousness exalts a nation, right? But sin is a reproach to any people. I think if you look after the morality of the people, and we're gonna have to talk. This is gonna sound like the government is a savior, but it's not. But when it comes in terms of voting, I think as Christians we need to start thinking more about morality and how the government affects our everyday lives, rather than how it's going to affect my pocket.
Yeah.
We have to have a level of trust in Christ that He provides, or that even going through difficult periods is okay. Yeah. But we need to know that the party that we're putting in has a morality that we can agree with. Yeah. I think is more important than economics. I'm willing to personally myself, I'm willing to sacrifice economically for morality in that sense. But economics can be there can be morality in that as well. We're not saying you can do dodgy and sinful things with money. That's possible as well. Christ is Lord over that as well. But when it comes to, I guess, these social issues, I think it's quite important as Christians to really think about, because we haven't thought about it for so long. We've just let it go. And I think it's the fact that majority of Christians these days have a view of Jesus is coming any second now. Yeah. And I know I don't want to bag out anything, but that's the majority of Christians, I think, have that view. And so we've gone away from politics and we've let the world just decay, I guess.
I've currently read a Christian tract that was just made. Came out of South Australia. I'm sure, South Australia, where the track was about the war in the Ukraine and why that is biblical evidence for end times, and that was being used, one, to preach the gospel, and two, to just run and hide in the hills.
There you go.
Yeah, so I know, but Pastor Chris, it looked like you wanted to say something.
Oh, it's just we obviously all agree that righteousness exalts a nation. We all agree that if a righteous government is in place, that long term the people will be happy. But the starting point is not to get the righteous government in place. The starting point is to get the gospel preached, that people are converted. And if more people are converted, then the likelihood that you'll end up with a converted person putting up their hand to be a member of parliament is greater. But right now, to artificially put a converted person over a country that really doesn't want any of the righteousness is really not going to make them righteous. So it's going to really just put them at odds with the rest of the population.
So wait, quickly. So that's sort of going back to what I was trying to say before, where we have, and Steve mentioned it as well, we have parties that have some good moral outlooks, but then they definitely have some bad ones. So would you be more inclined to vote in the party that has, some good ones with a few bad ones? Or would you rather vote for a completely libertarian party that says, Christians, you can live your life free of persecution, but then, evildoers, you can live your life and not have to worry about the punishments from it?
Are you saying because that allows you to preach the gospel?
Well, one, because it allows you to preach the gospel. It lets you still live out your Christianity without persecution. In a human sense, obviously not in a God sovereign sense, but from human perspective, it does allow Christians to work more freely. Where if one of these parties that right now, they have great moral standings, tomorrow might not. Not even like I think we'd all agree that there is no, unless I'm wrong, but there is no party that has just total great biblical moral outlooks.
Well, there's no longer a Christian party.
No.
Even them, to be honest, sadly, some not all of them, but there were some of them that were very weak on biblical values. But anyway, so do you understand where I get at between the libertarian?
Yeah.
So what do you do in that case as Christians right now? Should we be more inclined to vote a total libertarian or somebody that has maybe 80% good moral values but 20% bad?
I don't think that I've got nothing against voting a Libertarian Party, but I don't think that persecution should be high on our list of priorities. And even to the degree in which we want freedom of religion, it shouldn't be firstly about ourselves. It should be about the nation and our neighbours. And if we have to suffer persecution, so be it. So therefore, I haven't got a huge amount of time for the libertarian. I like the libertarian parties because basically, naturally, I'm a libertarian, but I have to be informed by the gospel, and that tells me that I have to think about the nation and others before myself.
So righteousness, once again, is not always as simple and clear to work out in its pecking order. So all of us as Christians, if we sat down and talked about it, we all have our hobby horses. And so we tend to lose balance to some degree. It's only the gospel and the Bible, when it's fully implemented, that you end up with symmetry and you have the right emphasis on the right things. So, for instance, on the one hand, you might feel like abortion is the most important thing that needs to be stopped in this country. And I don't disagree with you, but I'd be thinking through also the idea that if, for instance, a government came and said, we would pay everyone not to work, and everyone would be paid and you could just stay at home. We'll even have someone come to your house and pick you up and take you to the movies once a week. We'll have someone come to your house and do your lawn mowing once every 3 weeks. And then we'll come and we'll cut your nails and do your hair. We will do everything for you. You have to weigh all of that in balance, don't you?
Yeah.
Because there is also a command to work. There is also a command to take responsibility. There's also a command to... Now, clearly, we have 10 commandments in the Bible, and we're looking at all of them, and, you know, sometimes we rank them. And we'd clearly say the first, have no other gods, is the most important. And we would possibly say the 10th is less important, but the last one is do not covet, which is like have no other gods. And so obviously it's the Christian's job to find that balance.
Yeah.
And so I'm not making it easy for you.
No. And I think that's the whole point. Like, there's no clear-cut answer, you know, and that goes to the point where, I don't have time, or no, we need to, as Christians, we need to start, because we haven't for so long, we need to start thinking about these things. We need to start praying about these things. We need to start looking up our candidates and looking up at parties and really getting involved. It doesn't take a lot of effort, but it's going to take some. I think Christians need to stop being lazy. You know, she'll be right attitude needs to stop, and we need to start thinking about how does our faith, our Christian faith, sway or take over our views in this area of politics. And just like, so with that question before, that despair, that, you know, I feel like there's no hope. What would a Christian do in that situation? Like, there's an election, there's no one you can vote for. They're all, you know, useless. They're all sinful. the parties are all rubbish. Let's just say that's the bottom of the bottom.
They're all Greens and Labor.
So God uses the small, the weak, the not so noble. So certainly go into your room and pray. Certainly make sure people around you hear the gospel. I would go further to say, in a small and a weak way, if it is appropriate, go and join a party that will actually welcome you because you are a Christian. There are some parties that will not welcome you because you are a Christian. So we know in Adelaide, 500 people who were Christians tried to join the Liberal Party and they all got thrown out. Purely because they were too conservative and they came from a church. And so don't go and join them. If they don't want a Christian, go and join a party where you will be welcome and you can be part of, and they're wanting a Christian voice.
This might be a side view, but I don't understand. How can you get thrown out of a party in a democracy?
No, because the party can accept or decline you.
Okay. All right.
I think they have the right to accept or decline.
Yeah, or decline. Yep, no, that makes sense.
But another thing as well, I was thinking about this today, and about the podcast, is that far often, and you are the gun for this, Chris. I've done it a bit, and I'm sure Steve's done it a lot as well. Is that we need to preach the gospel into the government, right? So you may have to vote for the dud candidate, right? But that means that you need to call that candidate when he's elected and say, do you know that Jesus Christ put you in that position? Do you know that he is Lord over the government? Do you know that you will give an account to him one day? Do you know that you need to submit to Christ? And you need to preach the gospel in that area. I think, and you, every week we're doing that. We're writing letters to the government and saying that you need to submit, you need to turn, you need to repent. And I think Christians, we don't do that enough. We don't call our candidates. We don't, meet up with them. We don't message them or email them. We just, woe is me. And then we just carry on.
And I think a lot of it just goes back to that view that I used to have where there's no point. It goes back to that despair.
Well, that's the whole point, yeah. So what do you do in that despair? What do you do in that despair? You do that. That's one thing.
You do the very small things.
The small thing.
You do the very weak things.
Yeah.
You do the things that God will use to confound the wise. You do the things that God will use to confound all those people who are high and mighty. And we don't know how he's going to work. All we need to do is be faithful.
That's it.
Part of a despair might come from just having high expectations of men and then getting those expectations dashed. Whereas as Christians, we should be sceptical about men. We should be sceptical about ourselves. And we should never have high expectations of men, but we should have high expectations of the God that we have put our faith in.
That's right.
And has proved faithful.
So that answers sort of the question, is that by us voting and trying to get into a party, is that us saying, no, Jesus, you're not the savior, the government is?
Not at all. Not at all.
I think Christians are needed in every part of society. We need a Christian policeman.
Yep.
We need a Christian nurse. We need a Christian teacher. And we need Christians in politics.
Yeah.
And Christians are not to hide their light under a bushel, but we are to let our light shine.
So answer the question then. When you meet someone and they say, oh no, the state and the church shall be separate. I think that people say that a lot. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, maybe, Steve or Chris, both actually?
So I think we'd all agree that we don't want the state and the church to be one. So we don't want the state over the church or the church over the state. They're two separate realms, if you like, that God has instituted in society and put them separate.
Sorry, Pastor, when you say the church, do you mean a denomination or do you mean the universal body? It shouldn't be only Christians can run? Do you mean we shouldn't have a Christian as prime minister? Just a bit more clarity on what do you mean by the church?
So we have a God-ordained leadership in the church. Just because we've ordained a leadership like elders and deacons, that does not make them in charge of the government. So, for instance, even if a Christian in that church decides to run for politics and become the prime minister, in their job as prime minister, they are not in submission to the church. They're actually in submission to God. So it's two separate offices altogether, two separate realms. That does not mean that one realm can't speak to the other, and it does not mean that the other can't speak to the one. So certainly they can influence each other or talk to each other, but they are not to be lords over one another.
So one can't lord it over the other, and the other certainly can't lord it over the other, if you know what I mean. So the church can't lord it over the government. But today, you would definitely say that the government definitely tries to lord it over the church. Would
They
you agree with
do.
that? Well, they do.
They do lord it over the church.
So once again, the government is appointed to reward that which is good and punish that which is evil. And so much of what our government does doesn't even classify sometimes into that. It's just doing a lot of stuff to collect data and to go off and talk about this and, make decisions about things that the government's really not required to make decisions about.
Social engineering.
Yeah. And so they get involved in a lot of things that the government's really not appointed by God to do.
Yeah.
Conversely, when they do that, the church thinks, well, we should just be quiet in a corner and say nothing. We should be speaking into it. We should be speaking and speaking to it. So the government can speak to us and tell us, you should do this and you should not do that. But there are certain aspects in the scriptures where we are clearly told we are only to obey God in these things. And we're not to obey any man. And so particularly in the realms of worship, we only institute into worship what God has told us to institute. And so when the government tries to influence how and when and
If you can,
what is
if you
included,
can't.
we have to be submissive to God.
Very good. Any final comments, thoughts?
Well, on that issue, I agree with Chris totally, but I think what people get confused about, the church and state should never be mixed. But then people go on to say, well, that means religion and politics should never be mixed. That's a totally different issue.
Amen.
And not only is it a different issue, it's an impossible one to ever do that. Everyone's politics is influenced by their religion, especially if you define religion as your ultimate values.
Yeah.
So it's an absolute fool's errand to say that religion should never enter politics, because someone's religion is going to enter politics.
Yeah. It's not whether there's a religion, it's which religion.
Exactly.
Right.
Everyone has a religion. Yes, even the atheists, you have a religion. All right, we'll wrap it up.
All right, well, I pray that the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. God bless.